Able to seal him. Here's the pass. Oh, what a catch! Leaping into the air and pulling it down is T. Higgins. Burrow facing pressure. Goes over the top. Wide open is Chase. And he splits the defenders for the touchdown. Cincinnati kid, Hubbard's got a convoy, chased by Andrews, at
the 30, the 20, he will score. Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Mon. I am Jake. That is Eric. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Hooday, gentlemen. Hooday to all you guys out there. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We know right now it's the off season. We're all kind of in this let's go football mode. Guys, we are 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away for training camp. It is right around the corner. I am very excited. I know you guys are too, Mon. How's your week been, bud?
Good. My computer locked up about 35 seconds ago. I rebooted, and I made it at the beginning of the show, so it's going to be a great show. It's a hot summer in Florida. It's rained a little bit. Everything's good, and I'm so excited about football season. I can't wait, guys. 2 weeks.
I can't either. Mon, I'll tell you why my week's been good. 2 words: Reese Hines. Right, the new Cincinnati Reds legend. In his first 2 games, breaking a MLB record, most extra base hits in a first 2 game for any player in Major League Baseball history. Isn't that hard to believe that record was just now broken? Major League Baseball has been around forever. It's incredible to think that record has been broken, but it has been by Reese Hines. The Reds are drawing me back in, Mon. That's what they do to me. They draw me in. They get me all hyped up. And then they get swept by the Detroit Tigers. And then they bring me right back in, Mon. And now I'm back in full go thanks to Reese Hines and this juvenated Reds offense. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Eric, how's your week been, bud?
Week's going by fast. You know, it's just to kind of paint the scene for everybody. During Bengals season, our group chats have a lot of canned responses. Usually Jake's saying, our defense is horrible. Why'd they call that play? Well, in the offseason, it's the Reds are amazing. I love this team. Followed by fire the manager. It's I don't even know if you type anymore. It's just a canned response, and you got 2 or 3 of them.
Listen, I am never one to blame coaches, but David Bell, he's got to go. He's got to go. Listen, I like the guy. He's a great guy, but David Bell's got to go. But this is not a Reds podcast. This is a Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Mon, tonight we are going to discuss the offensive roster for this Bengals team. Next week, we are going to do the defensive roster. And, guys, then it's training camp. Going to be interesting to see a lot of battles. Mon, you and I were talking off air. You talked about roster gymnastics. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. I think on both sides of the ball, this Bengals team is going to have to do some roster gymnastics to keep all these talented players. As I go through the offensive roster right now, as we will here in just a second too, a lot of good players, Mon, on this roster. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Bengals finagle their way through to get to the final roster with all these guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, actually, to me, picking out the players was the easy part. It's how many at each position group. They go 10 at offensive line. Are they going to go short there? Are they going to go heavy at running back? You know, we have the big unknown this year with the new kickoff rules.
Yes.
Are they going to go extra running back? Are they going to go extra tight end? What are they going to do? There's just a lot of unknowns. I think they are going to go light at certain positions, and we're about to talk about that. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. There's some guys they drafted are nicked up and recovering from injury, so I could see them going on physically unable to perform and potentially coming back later in the season. But, yeah, it's going to be fun to talk about it, so let's do it.
Let's do it. Houday again to everybody out there joining us tonight. Thank you guys so much. Again, we know the off season it's tough. It's thin news right now, but we're here to talk Bengals, and we appreciate you guys being here with us. We love you guys, so thank you very much. Go ahead and put in the comments section. Let us know if there's a roster move you disagree with. I'm sure a lot of you will disagree with Mon's. With mine, I'm sure you'll agree because I'm usually right about this. But before we get to the roster, Mon, we had some Bengal news, a little bit of Bengals news this week. Joey B on his once a year podcast that he goes on talked about a couple of interesting things. Obviously, the one thing everybody's talking about is Joey B's statement that he is going to be giving everybody something to talk about. He feels like people have forgotten him. I don't know. That sounds like a very dangerous Joe Burrow to me. If I'm playing against him this year, I'm afraid of what I'm going to see from Joe Burrow because it sounds like he is hungry. Mon, we hear he's put on about 10 or 15 pounds worth of muscle. He looks bigger. He looks stronger. He talked about how he got to start his offseason 12 to 15 weeks before everybody else and just has been in the laboratory working. So what are your thoughts, Mon, on what Joey B talked about on that podcast?
No, I enjoyed it. I thought it was refreshing. He seems he's a relaxed guy in the first place, but he seemed extra relaxed. Like he was going to have some fun. He's not apologizing for it. There are a couple little things nobody's really talking about that alarm me a little bit, and I'll touch on that in a second from that interview. But I just love the fact how when they asked him about the 18-game season, and I thought he came up with some really creative things that might happen. We know that the NFL is going to 18 games. We know that. We know what's happening. And then Chase Daniels and all these morons out there bashing him. I guarantee you, Joe Burrow has paid more in union dues to the NFLPA than Chase Daniels will ever pay. Chase will have to play until he's 70 years old to pay the union dues that Joe Burrow has paid. So I thought it was just annoying, for him to chime in. The one thing I didn't like about the interview, he has put on some weight. He looks good. He looks the part. He has openly said I haven't done any push-ups since the injury. I know it's a simple thing, push-ups. He has to protect his wrist. What's going on? Is he still a couple weeks away from? When is he going to get cleared for actual contact? That's going to be something to monitor. But hey, I think he's going to be fine. He looks good. I just want him to play every game. He's even said that he wants to take care of his body. He wants to make sure he plays in every game this year.
And there was a comment on that, Jake. There was a comment on the Lockdown podcast today too. It might be, how many push-ups do any of them really do? Most of the strength training, they're not working calisthenics. But they're out there bench pressing. They're working on the machine. They're doing a lot more. I don't know that push-ups are done that often. So they kind of brought up that he may have just blamed it on the wrist, but he might not ever do push-ups. I know, Jake, you're a proponent of them to build yourself and get yourself ready for strength training. But how often do people, being a strength coach yourself, how often do people actually use push-ups as a main staple of their regime?
Yeah, not very many, unless you're Herschel Walker. I don't know if you guys heard the story about Herschel. All he did was push-ups and sit-ups, but he did like 1,000 a day, I think, push-ups and sit-ups, 1,000 each. So nobody's doing that kind of thing. We in my strength training program, we use them as an auxiliary lift, really on a daily basis, but it's never a core lift. It's not a main lift. And again, really, guys, when we think about that comment about the push-ups, Joe Burrow is not having to grab a hold of somebody and extend and push. There's not a lot of times where he's going to have to do that unless it's to throw TJ Watt down. But he's not going to be grabbing and extending and pushing. So, people thinking that kind of thing,
it's not about grabbing and extending. When he gets knocked back, he has to use his arms and hands to brace himself. And that's where you need strength in your wrists. So I think that's what it is.
And And you hope even Mon, if you do have strength there, anytime that you're having to brace yourself, it's a scary thing. I mean, we don't want to see that at all. I like what Vanguard said too. He talked about Joey B playing the piano. See, to me, I would think that would be more strenuous on the wrist. Again, I've never played piano, but Mon, I know you're a jack of all trades when it comes to.
Yeah, I was in a rock band. I played the piccolo and the piano.
The guitar? You got the guitar? He was one of those 80s hair bands, weren't you, Mon? Who's
That
got
was
the picture?
Zamfir, the magical pan flute.
Listen, I'm gonna see if Heather can get us a picture. You guys, everybody has got to see this picture of Mon. We've got to do it. We've got to show it. He had the most incredible perm mullet you will ever see in your entire life, Eric. It's one of the greatest pictures of all time. It's just absolutely.
In the 80s?
It's in my face.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It might have been the 70s.
I'll send it to you, Eric.
Yeah, we'll get that.
That was in his Led Zeppelin days. Listen, the other thing, again, you talked about the 18-game schedule, Mon. Those it's like everybody's always trying to get Joe Burrow riled up. Like, why are people doing that? It's just absolutely ridiculous. You talked about Chase Daniels coming on and saying, oh, I guess the NFLPA, they're not going to like what he said and all this other nonsense. No, they don't care about all of that. Give me a break. Everybody knows. Go ahead.
Let's outline what he had. He has the perfect idea, and it's players friendly, and it's giving the players something that they need, knowing that we're going to go to an 18-game season. Originally it was floated out there that we would have 2 bye weeks, just anywhere. Joe floats out there, hey, let's have them week 13. Everybody's on bye, and we play the Pro Bowl that week, like the NBA All-Star week. How great is that? Everybody gets to go into December resetting. It's brilliant. So I can't believe that they're hating on him, because he's advocating for something that's going to give more player safety, allow those injured players to get another week of rest going into that playoff push.
Listen, haters are going to hate. Haters are going to hate. I mean, that's the way the world is. I think it's a shame. But Joe Burrow coming up. Joe Burrow knows this schedule is going to 18 games. He knows it. He's just trying to get ahead of the game, and I think it's a great idea. Listen, the players hate where the Pro Bowl is. There are numerous players that have talked about how ridiculous when the Pro Bowl is and before the Super Bowl and all that other stuff. The players hate that. They don't want it at the end of the season before the Super Bowl. So you can understand kind of where he's coming from.
Yeah. I thought it was very well thought out, and I thought it was a good conversation to have. And it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out, because they will go to an 18-game season.
I think so. And Jennifer Jones, you want to throw that up there real quick, Eric? That's a great comment from Jennifer Jones, a former golf professional. Jennifer, I would love to know what your golf handicap is. I've always admired people that can golf. That's one of the only sports I just cannot do, Mon. I spend more time in the woods and throwing golf clubs than I do out on the green. I am a terrible golfer. But Jennifer Jones.
Yeah. It's probably the only sport I'm bad at, because I'm just a phenomenal athlete. And but it is what it is. Probably the only. I mean, I was on the Lebanese national team. I was pretty good.
Oh yeah, I know. You're.
I was putt-putt champ, Daytona Beach.
By the way, I am putt-putt champ in my house. I own that title by far. Listen, real quick too, before we get to this roster thing, Trent Brown. We found out he is. Did you guys know he is a rancher? Owns a bunch of horses. No, interesting, right? Interesting. So I want to ask you guys this really quick, Mon. If you, there it is. There's Jennifer's comment. She says, as a former golf professional, where wrist and forearms are extremely important, push-ups were never a part of increasing that strength and flexibility. So there you go, Mon. I'll ask you first. If you owned a ranch, what would be on it? What would be on it? What would you farm if you owned a ranch? I want to know this.
If I had a ranch, uh,
Just the fact of thinking about you farming is absolutely hysterical to me.
Listen,
but I want to know, Mon, what would you farm? I think he has a cattle ranch. Is that right? Is that what Trent Brown
he
has?
does. He's a cattle ranch. You know what? I could see myself being the cattle and livestock. I could see that, and maybe another portion of the ranch, some other substances that I can use when I retire. But it's a joke.
So, Jake, you just it makes me cringe because I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a ranch. My dad has a ranch here. You don't farm animals. You farm crops. You raise livestock. You raise horses. You breed horses. No,
but don't you farm cattle? Don't you
no,
raise cattle?
Farming is growing stuff in the ground. You're a rancher. You breed and you raise cows. You sell them. You raise.
Listen,
I mean, horses.
Listen, I grew up on the beach. I don't know about all of the whole ranching thing. I'm just I just cannot get the thought on my mind of mine getting up early in the morning after the rooster crows and getting to work on his farm.
He's really got them. He would be out there running the ball.
I would be, if I had a big patch of land, I'd be a citrus farmer. I would. I love fruit.
Okay.
I love lemons. I love oranges. I would do that, and it's a lot of money in Florida.
T Brookie, why are you making fun, T Brookie? I don't. Listen. People raise cattle for meat and stuff, right? That's
right.
That's what I'm kind of thinking here. Vanguard says Trent Brown needs a bigger horse.
I don't know if they make them bigger. That's the problem.
It's so funny. It's so funny that Vanguard said that, because when I first saw that video, I'm thinking to myself, what is that horse thinking right now? He's got a 6'8", 350-pound man on him. Jeez Louise, can you imagine? That's great. Funny.
Golly.
All right, so listen, hey, let's get to this is not a farming podcast either. So let's get to
I think everybody knows that. I think everybody can tell we're not into livestock and farming.
Listen,
so let's get back to football.
It's 2 weeks away from actual football talk. Nobody wants to. This is what they're here for, to listen to Mom and Jake talk about things they know nothing about.
I like
apples. Milking cows.
I like apples.
We just went from 250 viewers down to 60, just like that.
As you said, you were going to farm a cow. These are Midwesterners we're talking to.
All right, let's get to this offensive roster. Here we go. Listen, now, Mon, the way I think that we were going to do this is we're going to go by position, correct? And obviously, some of these positions we kind of already know what is out there and you know how this is going to shape up. But I want to go through this offensive side of the football and try to get as close as we can to stacking this roster before we go into training camp. So let's go with quarterbacks first. Mon, just give me. Obviously, I think we all have an idea. The Bengals are keeping 2 quarterbacks. Agreed?
I agree.
Mon? Yes, I agree too. I agree. Obviously, Joe Burrow and Jake Browning going to be the 2 quarterbacks of this team. They just signed an extension to Jake Browning, bringing him back. So we know Jake Browning's going to be number 2. Logan Woodside, a name that we heard a couple years ago on this Bengals roster, he's back. Obviously, he's more of a preseason type of a quarterback. What about AJ McCarron? What about Eric's guy, AJ McCarron? You see him coming back and joining this 53-man roster? What do you think?
No, there's no way. They keep 2, and I think you hit it on the head. It's going to be Burrow and Browning. Woodside, I think, will be a practice squatter. I think that's what they're going to do. That's probably the easiest breakdown of the offense right there. Burrow's going to be healthy. Browning was a pleasant surprise last year. I would have rather not seen him play at all, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. He came in and he played well. He won 4 games out of 7. And I think we have a very capable backup quarterback. Woodside has played in the NFL. He was an original Bengal draft pick. I see him being on the practice squad.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't. I do. I don't know. I feel like AJ McCarron is going to come back at least for the preseason. Obviously, Jake Browning is the number 2. I don't think there's going to be any debate with that or any type of a challenge from AJ McCarron. But would be interesting to see if the Bengals bring him back and how much Joe Burrow is going to play in the preseason. I mean, that's something that is going to be interesting to see. I don't see it happening very much. So, all right, so we have our quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Jake Browning. We agree on that. 2 quarterbacks. Let's go to running backs, Mon. Right now I have the Bengals keeping 3. But once we get to the very end of this thing, I'm going to talk about the final roster spot because I think it's going to come down to a running back or a tight end. Running backs, Zach Moss, Chase Brown, Travion Williams. Agree, disagree? You think they're going to keep 4? Are you 100% on that, feeling that they're going to keep 4 running backs, Mon? Or you think they're going to keep 3?
I'm very confident to keep 4. I don't see how they can go less. Yeah, I think 4 is the minimum. Obviously Brown, obviously Zach Moss, Travion Williams, and Evans right now are going to be the 4. I would not be surprised if a McKinnon comes in that played for Kansas City last year, another vet. The Bengals are going to need another running back because they don't really have a bell cow. It's going to be running back by committee. It's going to be 2 to 3 guys that get most of the snaps. And don't forget, special teams is huge. Special teams is really going to be huge. They're going to need that 4th running back.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think. Well, I'm having a hard time going with either 4 tight ends or 4 running backs, but maybe I was going to say maybe that 3rd running back or that 4th running back isn't on the roster yet. You talked about a guy like McKinnon. There's other guys out there. Be interesting to see if the Bengals do bring anybody in for training camp. We talked about last week. Right now, I think there's 3 spots available still on this roster. So going to be interesting to see if they bring in any guys at the running back spot. But so we definitely agree that Zach Moss, Chase Brown, and Travion Williams are making this football team. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You say Chris Evans or a number 4 guy that is not on the roster. We'll wait and see. Wide receiver, Mon, I have the Bengals keeping 6. Jamar T, Jermaine Burton, obviously, and then Yoshi, Chucky Sizzle, and Trent Irwin. Those are my 6. I think the Bengals keep 6 here. I do think there's some interesting names out there. They really like Kwame Lassiter, a guy who they had drafted previously. And, you talked a little bit about Cedric Jackson too, as far as a kick returner. But what do you think? Are they keeping 6? You agree or disagree with what I said?
I think they keep 6. Everyone you named will make the team. People like Jackson, Lassiter, even Kendrick Pryor, they'll be practice squatters. They could go heavy there. They could go 7 at wide receiver. Special teams, I'll say it again, it's going to be huge this year with that kickoff return. They're going to need more skill players. So I have them at 4 running backs, 6 wide receivers. The 6 you named, we know the big 3, Higgins, Chase, Burton is going to be wide receiver 3, Yoshi wide receiver 4, Irwin is wide receiver 5, and then Charlie Jones is going to be wide receiver 6. And I think that's going to be our guys. Injuries happen, and we have a lot of guys that have been in the Bengal camp for the last few years that know this offense. We might be able to survive an injury here and there at the wide receiver spot because we're pretty deep.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at this roster, if they did keep 7, that would be very interesting. It would be because of special teams. Eric talked about that last week with the new kickoff return rules. We could see a guy like Jackson making this roster just for special teams. What are your thoughts, real quick, on that, Eric? Do you think 6 wide receivers, or do you think a 7th guy for that new KOR and kickoff?
So that was actually going to be a question I was going to throw back to y'all. We're getting a crowded wide receiver room because it's a lot of good guys and there's a lot of potential in that room. My question is around Trenton Irwin. Is this the year that he's the odd man out? The Kwame Lassiter, Kendrick Pryor, Shedrick Jackson. There's a lot of talent there. We know that Joe loves Trenton Irwin. At some point, your guys, if there's someone that's more talented, your guy is going to go. We haven't seen Trenton Irwin return punts or kick returns that often. If he's not as versatile, could this be the year that one of those guys pushes him out?
I mean, I'll go first, Mon. I don't think so. I think Trenton Irwin makes this team. I think he makes it pretty easily, to be honest. Joe Burrow loves him. You already talked about that. Joe Burrow is going to be the deciding factor on who makes this roster if it comes down to something like that. I see Trenton Irwin as a solid number 5 guy. I think Charlie Jones would be more of that kick returner as opposed to Jackson or Pryor or Lassiter. I don't know. That's just my opinion, but I think Jones makes this roster more for special teams than for receiver at this point, because I think the 5 that we already talked about is pretty solid. That's a really good receiver room, especially if Jermaine Burton ends up being as good as we think he is. What do you think, Mon?
I think Irwin's a lock, and I'll tell you why. Burton's a rookie. Yoshi Voss, 2nd year. Charlie Jones, 2nd year. They're still trying to figure out the NFL game. I know they showed flashes last year, especially Yoshi. I think they need that veteran in Irwin to stay on the roster, and I think he's a lock. I think he's a lock because the other guys are young. They're figuring things out. I'm excited with their upside. Yoshi really showed a lot last year. We talked about Joe Burrow putting on 10, 15 pounds. Yoshi looks a lot bigger. He needed to get bigger and stronger. And Burton is going to be a solid NFL player. I think he's going to be an upgrade over Boyd. Boyd was a solid Bengal, but Burton's a better athlete. I think he's going to be a good addition. But they need that veteran presence, and Irwin gives you that.
And let's not forget too. I mean, we still are going to get to the tight ends here, but Zach Moss and Chase Brown, very good receiving backs too. I mean, we got. I would think that they would be more involved with the pass game as well, especially since it will be running back by committee. So we both have 6 receivers. I have 3 running backs right now, 2 quarterbacks. You have the 4 running backs. Let's go to tight end, because this is an interesting, very, very interesting position. I have right now 3 that I think are locks, and that is Gesicki, Sample, and Hudson. I think those 3 are absolute locks. I don't see those guys going anywhere. And I think that tight end room is the best tight end room that Joe Burrow has had since he has been a Bengal. So Gesicki, Sample, Hudson. I'm going to talk about that final spot because I do think it'll come down to a running back or tight end. But what do you think, Mon? 4 tight ends at this point right now. If you think they're keeping 4, that means they're only keeping 9 offensive linemen, and we know the Bengals are more of a 10 lineman room. But what do you think? You think they keep 3 or 4 tight ends, Mon?
They're keeping 4 tight ends. Eric All will start the season on physically unable to perform.
I have that too. Yes.
Yeah, Gesicki. You have McLaughlin, you have Hudson, and obviously Drew Sample making the team. I think if Eric All gets healthy, I think Hudson might get waived, but they're going to start with 4 tight ends. And something you just said, I think they are going to have to go light at one position, and we got one position group left. Yeah. And I think they're going to have to go light one there, and I think there's a lot of flexibility for that to happen, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Now, are we positive that Eric All is going to be on the pup? I mean, that's the move for the Bengals to make, but if he's healthy, can they really work that?
I think he will be because
I think he will be.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He
Mon.
won't. I'm sorry. Yeah, if they put him on physical and able to perform, I think he's out the first 6 weeks, and they have another 3 week window to activate him. That'll give him another 2 months. We don't want to rush the guy back. He tore up his knee late in the season, so
Yeah.
I think
I
he'll come.
think it's a lock that Eric All starts on PUP. I don't see him. I just don't see it. I think he starts on PUP. It's a good move for the Bengals. It gives them time to really see what McLaughlin has too, because they really don't know what he's going to end up being. But this room that once was very thin has become very interesting because you have really Eric All healthy. You could have 5 talented tight ends, and we know that the Bengals have already talked about running a more of a 2 tight end heavy set. So going to be very interesting to see how that tight end room pans out. But I agree. I think Eric All starts on PUP, and I'm going to talk about the final spot in a minute. But I have Gesicki, Sample, and Hudson as absolute locks. I don't think there's any doubt about that. All right, let's go to the O-line and talk about the O-line. Did you – someone want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, basically, we have a Tanner competition in training camp is what you're talking about. Everything else is solidified. It's going to be which Tanner makes the roster, right? Basically.
Yeah, I do. And I think Tanner Hudson, listen, I know he has bounced around, but he was one of the better players toward the end of the year as far as guys that that Jake Browning could count on. I think it would be interesting to see what Joe Burrow feels about Tanner Hudson. You got a very interesting tight end room if those are the 3 tight ends, because you have Hudson and Gesicki, very similar type of guys that you can split out wide and create some mismatches between the hashes and stuff. So very interesting to see there. And I agree with Jennifer too. I think McLaughlin. I don't think the Bengals want to see him go to the practice squad, because I think he's a guy that would get snagged right away. As talented as the upside that he has, I think is really the best way to put that. Let's look at this O-line room, guys. Obviously, Orlando Brown Jr., Cordell Volson, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Trent Brown, and Amarius Mims. To me, those guys are locks. Obviously, that's stating the obvious. After that, it's a little interesting. Let me tell you who I have, Mon, and I want to hear what you have. So I have the Bengals. Go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No, you go right ahead. Go ahead.
All right. I have the Bengals keeping 3 centers. Trey Hill and Matt Lee, I think, make this roster. I have them keeping Jackson Carman, Cody Ford, Deontay Smith, and those 2 backup centers. I know we are a guard short technically. However, we've already heard about Trent Brown moving around a little bit to guard a little bit. So I think the Bengals feel confident enough with Cody Ford and either
That's
moving.
10.
I know. I have 10.
Oh, you have 10. Okay, I got.
I have 10. So I have the 6 that I said: Jackson Carman, Cody Ford, Matt Lee, and Trey Hill.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah. So what do you think?
I think they're going to go light on the offensive line, and I'll tell you why. I think Brown has versatility to play guard. Mims can come in and play tackle. Cody Ford has played tackle and guard, so Cody Ford makes the team. My backups, we agree on the starters. We know who the starters are going to be. I got Trent Brown starting. I got Kappa, I got Karras, I got Volson, and I have Orlando Brown. My backups are Jackson Carman, Mims, Lee, and Ford. I have 9 offensive linemen on the roster. I will say this.
You're right. You know what? Hang on, Mon. I'm sorry for interrupting. You're right, though.
Yeah.
I think I did name 11, but I was just naming. I was just naming guys. I don't have us keeping Deontay Smith.
Okay. Yeah. I was wondering. It looked like it was heavy. I think they go 9. I will say this: if injuries occur on the offensive line, I think it could be our roster flaw for 2024. I think the depth is that average. I'm high on Mims, number one pick. Lee, I think, could turn into a good pro. Guys, he's 285.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think he's ready. They have him listed at 305. I've seen a lot of other publications. They have him 285, 290. I think it's going to take a little bit for him. Cody Ford has bounced around the league. I know they were high on him last year. Jackson Carman, they're still waiting for that light bulb to come on. I'm not giving up on him. He's a second round pick. Her depth is a little alarming, and I just pray we stay healthy on that offensive line. I would not be surprised. You know how it happens. Last roster cuts, late August. Teams release all their players. If there's a good player out there, I can see the Bengals putting in a couple waiver claims for offensive linemen.
I agree. I think Vanguard says he's predicting Jackson Carman does not make this roster, and I think he might be right. I think Jackson Carman is definitely on the bubble, but like you said, if Jackson Carman doesn't make this roster, the Bengals are going to have to go out and they're going to have to get somebody, because there's unless all of a sudden what's his name Kirkland. Jackson Kirkland. And
you can't remember Jackson.
I can't remember Jackson. I just said Jackson Carman.
You're just talking about Jackson Carman.
I know. Too many Jacksons. Jackson Kirkland is a guy that we've heard a lot of talk around, but does he beat out Jackson Carman? I mean, you have to at least have two tackles. You know what I'm saying? You have to at least have two backup tackles. So it's either going to be Jackson Carman, Deontay Smith, or Jackson Kirkland for that other spot, if what you say is true and they keep 9. I just don't see Deontay Smith making this roster. I think Trey Hill is a guy, too, that they've talked about moving to guard. So that could be the other backup guard, and then Matt Lee is the backup center. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting.
I'll add this. Karras does play guard also. Karras plays guard.
What I was going to say. Yeah.
And so honestly, Lee being a draft pick doesn't make him a lock. He's a 7th round draft pick. Everybody's excited about it because we were crying all draft weekend, interior offensive line. It could be Trey Hill as the backup. It really could be. Guess what? Our backup center could be on somebody else's roster right now. That's true. We don't know that yet. So that's going to be very interesting.
What about what Jennifer asked about is the kid from Louisville, the rookie, Eric Miller. Again, a guy, a big guy, guys. He's 6'7", 6'8", I think, 315, 320, something like that. A big dude. The Bengals seem to like those guys. Could an undrafted free agent make the roster? I don't know. It might be interesting to see. What do you think, Mon, about Eric Miller? You think he's got a chance of making this thing?
He is a big guy, 6'7". I think they had him listed as a tackle here. Honestly, I don't see an undrafted free agent coming in and playing center as a backup. Center is one of the most important spots on the offensive line. He's the quarterback of that unit. Yes, the blocking assignments and everything.
Well, she was talking about. No, she was just asking. He's listed as tackle, but could he be a backup? Could he be a backup guard?
I guess he could, but when I think of undrafted free agent, I think of a developmental kind of guy. Jackson Kirkland, for example, was the big signing undrafted free agent last year. We saw him play in the preseason. I'm sorry, he was terrible. He really terrible. Struggled. But you know what everybody's talking about? Guess what? He has an off season. He's gotten stronger, lifted weights. Before his senior year, his junior year and sophomore year, he was highly thought of, top 50 prospect. And then he sort of fell off a cliff his senior year with injuries. So, there is potential with Jackson Kirkland. Maybe the same thing with this Eric Miller kid from Louisville. We'll see. I just don't think I'm not going to count on him this year to be a key contributor. I think the Bengals might make a trade potentially and or hit the waiver wire late August, early September. I could see our backup center being on another roster.
That would be crazy. That'd be crazy because you already have Trey Hill and Matt Lee. You have 3 centers on this roster. Would that be crazy? That would be crazy if the Bengals did go out and get a free agent to fill that roster spot. So go ahead, Eric. Did you want to say something? Go ahead.
I'm just saying, circling back to the Jackson Carman, I think this is the year that we need to flip Jackson Carman. We need to use him as trade bait, trade him for somebody. I don't see him being a quality depth piece. I think that we've gotten far enough removed from his bad season so that the rest of the league might have forgotten about it. I know he's out there. He's sold as versatile because he's played all these positions. We've seen one or two great games out of him. I think now is the time to flip him for maybe you trade Jackson for a better quality backup guard. I know Cody Ford was originally told he was going to play tackle when we signed him. Is there a possibility of Trent Brown backing up the left side or moving to the left side if needed? I just think that this is the time. The highest amount that you'll ever get for Jackson Carman is now. You're not going to re-sign him. Now's the time. Flip him for something.
I think it's going to be an open competition in camp. I think they're going to really focus a lot on those backups. I said it. You just said it a few minutes ago. Trent Brown has played up and down the line except center. Karras can bounce around. Ted Karras was actually a higher rated guard at New England and Miami than a center. In Cincinnati, he's stuck at center. So, they have a lot of players that can jump around and play multiple spots. That's a positive thing. But we have been really lucky with pretty solid health on that offensive line. If we start seeing some injuries, buddy, especially on the interior, that could be a pretty massive issue there. That really could be. I wouldn't be surprised if they trade.
Knock on wood, man.
You're right.
Knock on wood. Because listen, I think one of the reasons why we see this very high confident level that we're seeing from Joe Burrow, although we've seen it pretty much his whole career, but I don't know, this year is just a little bit different. I think because he knows this offensive line is the best offensive line he's ever played behind. So gonna be very interesting to see what they do there. I want to circle back now and get to my final spot because Mon, you had the Bengals taking 4 tight ends and 4 running backs and 9 offensive linemen. I had the Bengals keeping 10 offensive linemen, so I have to do that final spot. And I do. I think this preseason is the career for Chris Evans. I think he has got to show that he can be on the field and contribute to this football team because I think that final spot will come down to him or Tanner McLachlan, the rookie tight end from Arizona. Going to be very interesting to see how it all shakes out. You think the Bengals keep 9 offensive linemen, and you could be right. We could see 4 running backs and 4 tight ends on this roster. Those spots are very talented. If a guy like Chris Evans doesn't make the roster, there's a very good chance he's going to get snagged by somebody, I would think. Same with Tanner McLachlan. So I think the Bengals are in a situation where they have to make some really tough decisions. And I know, injury and all that other stuff is can always get mixed into this thing, but this is a very talented roster for the Bengals, and they're going to have to make some interesting moves here to get this roster to where they want it to be, Mom.
Yeah, I know McLaughlin's a 6th round pick. 6th round picks get cut all the time. I think he's a roster lock unless he comes in and just stinks up preseason. I think the Bengals offense we've seen a shift already with Gesicki re-signing Sample to a nice 3-year contract, drafting 2 tight ends. I think the tight end is going to become integral in the Bengals offense. I really think it is. I think we saw glimpses of it last year. I'm telling you, the Joe Burrow injury is going to be a blessing in disguise for this organization because you're a guy pitcher. You mentioned it last week. He wants to come in and put his stamp on this offense. He doesn't want it to be the Callahan offense. He wants it to be the pitcher offense. It's going to be tight end, a little more running. I think we're going to pick up another vet running back. I have Evans making the team. I think Evans could be – he has that wow factor talent-wise, but there's something – the intangibles aren't there with him, and the coaches put him in a doghouse. Yeah, something's not there.
Yeah.
I just think 4 tight ends, 4 running backs. I think they go light at offensive line. I could see an extra 2 or 3 offensive linemen on the practice squad. They could easily move up. Don't forget, you can add, I think, up to 6 veteran players on your
Yes.
practice squad. I could see a couple offensive linemen there. Offer them a little bit of money, come back. We'll see how it shakes out. But man, it's going to be fun to monitor. It really is, and we have a lot to talk about over these next few weeks.
So I want to add
agree.
something on the Evans thing. I don't think it's the coaches. I think it's a Joe Burrow doesn't trust him thing. We go back to the last time that he really touched the ball. My birthday in 2020, was it 23 against the Chiefs? Or 2022 against the Chiefs, that he caught the touchdown pass from Joe Burrow, but he was in the wrong place. He was not at the depth where he was supposed to be. It just worked out that was the only option. And if you're not at the right depths that you're supposed to be, if you're not hitting your routes perfect, Joe Burrow doesn't trust people. And you've seen it over the years. You could see when Joe Burrow loses trust in someone, he doesn't even look at him. I think he's lost that trust, or he needs to regain it. And if he can't quickly, I think he should be traded or he should be gone. And I will add that I think they've gained flexibility in the fact that they're technically, at least they used him that way last year, could possibly roster Sample as a fullback, or at least see him as a fullback, and then keep McLaughlin because Sample is seen as another running back.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. Don't forget Sample. I know Sample is a tight end. His specialty is blocking. So if we have one less offensive lineman, Sample's going to play a lot of snaps as a blocking tight end, unbalanced line. So, he's sort of a poor man de facto tackle when you think about it.
Yeah.
He's 265, 270. So, I think the Bengals have a lot of flexibility there. But I agree with you, Jake. The Bengals, I can't remember the last time they only kept 9 offensive linemen. They always keep 10.
Always.
But I think this year there's always there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of unknowns coming into the season. I think they might have to go heavy on special teams with an extra running back and or tight end or even a wide receiver.
If it came down to it, Mon, let me throw this out here. If it came down to it, I'm not saying who it is, what the names would be, but if you had the choice, would you rather keep 4 tight ends or 4 running backs?
4 running backs right now.
4 running backs. Okay.
I'm keeping both. I'm keeping 4 of each.
I know you are. I know you are. I just, and you're right about Drew Sample. He's really more of like an H-back, right? I mean, if the Bengals are going to run the football, he could be that fullback H-back type of guy that we've seen a couple other teams have. So I don't know. Going to be very interesting. But it's a good problem to have, right? Is that there's going to be guys that the Bengals are going to have to cut, and they're going to have to do everything they can to keep them because this roster is stacked. I mean, it is stacked. This is the best roster from top to bottom. To me, this is the best roster the Bengals have had since Joe Burrow. It just is. I mean, again, I'm going to miss Joe Mixon, but and I'm going to miss DJ Reader. Those are the 2 big ones, I think, more than anything. But as I look at this roster from top to bottom, offense and defense, this is the most talented roster that Joe Burrow has had. And I think Joe Burrow knows it. I think that's where that confidence is coming from. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it again. Go ahead, Eric.
Before we get out of here, Mon sent this over. So tell us if this guy can make the roster or not. Maybe he's our walk-on fullback.
There it is. Look at that. Holy Lord. Look at that mullet. That thing is awesome, Mon.
Titusville High class of 86. I'm going to tell you, I was a machine. That's all I can say.
I mean,
he still is a machine, everyone.
It's definitely, you definitely got the party in the back, business in the front. I mean, you got the thing going. A little bit of that. I see a little peach fuzz there too, Mon. I see a little peach fuzz going on. Now you have that glorious mustache, but look at that little peach fuzz Mon had there. That's awesome. Look at those brows, dude. I mean, look at those brows. Those things are incredible.
That was the Lebanese love machine. Look at me, man.
Oh, Lord. Lock your
Oh, that's so
doors,
funny.
hide your daughters.
That is so funny. that is.
Okay,
Mom,
take that off, man. Take it
Mom,
off. Take that off.
Hey, you sent it to me. It's going to be our
Thank
new
you for
logo.
that.
We're going to work it in.
That's outstanding. Mom. Thank you for that. I needed that, dude. That was that's good. That's cool.
Thanks, Brandon. Thank you, Brandon.
All right, guys, that is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. As always, if you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. As always, if you like this podcast, make sure you give us that 5-star review. We very much appreciate that. Follow Mon on Twitter @TheFireMon. There's a good chance you might see more pictures of Mon and that glorious mullet. Follow me on Twitter @CoachJakeOwens9. Follow Eric on Twitter @EFlasher2Hs88. Follow the Wednesday Podcast Network on Twitter @WednesdayPod. And as always, follow the Bengals Pulse on Twitter @Bengals_Pulse9. On Instagram, the same without the @Bengals_Pulse9. Guys, thank you once again for joining us. We really appreciate it. Next week, we will break down the defensive side to this roster. Go ahead, Mullet. Let me hear it.
My wife just said, make sure you tell everybody we weren't dating then.
Heather wants no part of that. Heather wants no part of that. I don't blame you, Heather.
I blossom. Look at me. I'm a machine.
All right, guys. He is Eric. He is Mon. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse. Once again, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Hoo-day, Bengal fans. We will see you next week.